Good afternoon, and thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this extremely important conversation and an even more important conference where people really get an eye into not just the industry, but how to do business, and especially how to do business with the city. So I just want to commend the city team. I'm pleased to be joined by new friends and old friends. I just met Jorge, but Jorge Escarpita, Jimmy Akatunde, and Stephanie Hickman are all veterans in this industry. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And I can guarantee you that you won't have any of the questions that they sent you in advance. So you can just throw that away. But, you know, the first thing I'd like to know and ask you to share with the folks in the audience is, how did you get into this business? And I'm going to start with you, Stephanie, and I hope you're okay with us being on the first name basis.
Yes, ma'am, I am. And good afternoon, and thanks so much for the invitation to join this panel with the august group of people that we have here. Been to the summit many times, and I've always been over there, so glad to have an opportunity to share with the folks here. So how did I get into construction? I was actually born into construction. I'm second generation in Trice Construction, which is celebrating its 56th year this year. I'm 16 years into my ownership, and actually, I'm fourth generation in construction. So the question was, how did I do anything other than construction for the years that I did? So concrete construction for 56 years, so this is our family business.
Awesome. The family business. What about you, Jimmy?
Hello. Oh, it works.
Yeah, it's working.
No, I trained architect, wanted to build buildings, and I realized that I did a better job. I wanted to design buildings, and I realized that I could do a better job building them than designing them, and had more fun doing that, because construction is one of those industries that it's about people. It's about talking to people. It's about communication. And I've always been this person who I get excited meeting people and talking to people and understanding people and solving problems. And you recognize that in the building process, that's all we do. We kind of solve problems in a technical way, but we solve problems all the time. And it's about how do we collaborate and how do we talk and how do we work within teams. And what I really enjoyed once I started it is you begin to see how you affect people. You walk into a building or you walk into an open grassland and you realize that in 16 months there's going to be a building sitting there at the end, and then it's going to be a school, and there's going to be a bunch of kids and lives walking through the school and that experience. And then you start talking to people who experienced something you worked on, years, decades ago, and how it helped them. A hospital, how it helps people live and saves lives and make them better. And you realize that, okay, you're actually doing something good. You're just not working, you just don't have a career or job, but you're doing something good. And it's most days, not all the time, most days it's a good feeling.
Thank you. And Jorge, how did you get into the business?
Mine was a little bumpier and longer. So I started trade school right out of high school. So I joined the Carpenters Union and did an apprenticeship for about 2.5 years, then got brought into the office to a larger construction company, and then slowly moved up into project management, then did bivocational. So I went to North Park University while I was finishing my office internship, and eventually about 7 years later I decided to launch in 2007, right before the Great Recession. So to a large degree we're children of the recession, so we were scrappy, and a lot of it was necessity. I didn't have no great vision, no great dream, just needed to pay bills and get my kids through college, and get my kids to college, get them through daycare at that time. And yeah, so just worked hard and got some opportunities, and that's why we're here.
So each of you raise a really interesting aspect of this business, and that is construction business as employer. And when you look at the fact that small businesses, and as large as you are, I think under the guidelines, federal guidelines, I think you all qualify as small businesses. But would you talk a bit about the small business, or your business in particular as an employer in this community, and why that's important? I'll start with you, Jimmy.
I think we should start with Stephanie.
We're going to share the wealth.
Is he actually funny?
He really is.
Wow. This is what happens when you know people a long time. So most of the 15
They
years...
just X out the moderator too, but that's okay. I'm glad that he pointed to you.
okay, Madam
This is
Moderator?
fine, this is fine.
So small business as employers, we know that small businesses employ more people in the United States than the other businesses. But we also know about small, diverse businesses, like we all are here, that we employ more diverse people than other businesses. So I view small business as really an economic engine for our communities. And the employment of those people really lead to the economic inclusion of our folks into construction. We know that construction provides really good, well-paying jobs, things that instantly catapult people into the middle class when they come into those trade positions. So when you step back and you think about what we're doing, I appreciate Jimmy's experience in knowing how the buildings and the built environment affect people, but it's that every week paycheck that really drives families and builds communities and educates and clothes and house and feed people. That was the experience in my family's business early on, where they were small. It was a lifestyle business, but it took care of 10 households and allowed me, to go to college and others in my family. So when we think about it, it goes far beyond. It's the imputed impact that has. We know from some recent studies from the University of Illinois at Chicago that $1 spent with a small minority-owned business in Chicago multiplies, it's a 2.1x, 2.2x multiplier effect. So that's money going into households that they in turn spend in their communities where there are opportunities to do so. So it's not just the one job we create, but it's the multiple opportunities we create for those dollars to circulate in our communities. So it's a big driver for economic inclusion.
Economic inclusion, Jimmy?
That is so true. And I think in addition to what Stephanie said, in terms of, I think the advantage of smaller businesses, and I'm going to re-qualify small just in the size of the federal government. I don't believe that anybody, if you sign your check or sign any check on the front and the back, is a small business. Because once you sign checks on front and back, that stress is the same if you're signing for 10 or if you're signing for 10,000. Maybe I'm the only one who don't sleep at night trying to figure out how to sign checks here, but if you know what I'm talking about, there's no such thing. That experience, I think, is universal. But I think small businesses, or at least we happen to be more flexible. And I think in today's world that you have to find different ways to engage your community or engage the community and work with folks in the community. You have to be more flexible. Larger businesses will say, oh, you can do business with me, but you got to have this much insurance and this much bond and this much track record. By the time I have that, I don't need to do business with you, right? But small businesses are able to help other launch other smaller businesses, which I think is the key part. Because like Stephanie said, small businesses will hire more people than anybody else, right? Amazon can't hire everybody out of our community, I'm sorry. we have to do it. And the approach is we're getting our smaller businesses stronger because we also end up launching smaller businesses. In 20 years that we've been around, there's been so many people that they got their first contract working for us. There have been even businesses that started working elsewhere, and they'll say, we got our first large contract working with you guys. And I think we're able to take their chance. We're able to look at somebody and say, okay, you don't have the track record because you just started. You don't have everything in place, but something about you is giving me faith to give you this opportunity. And that's all we all want at the end of the day, is just an opportunity. And we can do that as smaller businesses. Larger businesses just don't have that tolerance for risk. And I think that's a big difference on the flexibility of a small business. Not only do we circulate our dollars better in our community, we are also able to launch other small businesses better in our community and ensure that they're successful.
Jorge, would you speak to the business, your business as an employer in the community?
Yeah, so obviously ditto to what they both said. I think the numbers are clear on the economic impact. I'll take it a little bit away from the data. I think, so I did a lot of work in the nonprofit sector before, and so love the nonprofit sector. I'm a board member on a nonprofit sector, so
Be
nothing on
careful.
that. But one of the things that I did notice is when we started the business, when you're paying a paycheck, it impacts them in a different way. It's like tangible. It's like meaningful. It's like I help people in different ways, but something about paying their bills is beyond. So I got more compliments and more thanks than anything I had done before. So I saw. So there's an empathy aspect to that, and I think that ties to the flexibility and what you could do. And for me, coming from different levels, from a tradesperson to a construction manager to an owner, I put a lot of emphasis on treating people well. I mean, it's in our mission statement, a better place to work. I wanted them to feel proud, right? To feel, it's number one, it's good money, so they're making good money, but to hold their head high, and that at every step of the process, it was a great place to work, not just on the executive level, you know? And I think I'm tying that a little to what Jimmy was saying, is like you're able to do that and kind of personalize people. You know, and, when you're really big, you can become numbers, right? You're not an employee number, and we do have that flexibility. So I'm taking it a little bit on the empathy level.
Just jump in real
Please.
quick and piggyback on what Jorge, what you're saying, is when people come to you and they show you the picture from, this is my daughter's graduation, and you know that you've been part of that journey in a way, or here's the picture of the wedding, here's the new baby, you know that it's the impact is broader than just the paycheck, and it's what it can deliver for families.
That's an excellent point. And when you think about that impact, when you think about the responsibility, when you think about the proximity that you talk about, it really places even more of a burden on each of you to be able to deliver. I want to talk about that burden in the context of how you get opportunities to do business yourselves. How do you get contracts for Trice, for your company, How does that happen?
Jimmy's at the top of that chain.
And
Because I
talk
have to get my
about
business from Jimmy.
and talk about the barriers. Talk about the barriers. So it sounds like she is punting to
She
you,
is
Jimmy.
definitely pointing to me on that one.
So how do you get that business, and what are the barriers to that?
So I think that I was thinking about this question today, so that's interesting. We've been around for 20 years now, and who we are today is different from who we were 10 years ago and who we are 5 years ago. So the business itself continues to evolve, and the way I like to think about it is, it's its own entity, it's its own person. It's not me. and I'm just a steward, right? I have to be there, no different than how you'll take care of a kid, to give it the resources, to get the best people, to make the right decisions, so that, right, we can grow, we can get better. And so the way we chase business today is different from the way we chased business 10 years ago and 20 years ago. Now we focus on just, I call it operation excellence. I want to build better than anybody else, but I want to build better than anybody else using folks from my community. So that at the end of the day, you look at this room, for example, and all this drywall and lights, and you can't tell who put it together. It's great. Chicago's full of what I consider to be great contractors. But what I want to be known for is when you look at a job site, don't even look at the sign on the job site. If you look at a job site and you see a lot of people that look like me on there, you go, that might be a Ujama job. And that's what we want to push. That's what our culture is. That's what our value system is. It's about putting our folks and our community back to work and doing it the best way possible with excellence. I want to be great at it. I just don't want to be the black contractor. I want to be a great contractor that just happens to be black. And I think if you do that, and I'm going to steal your line, letting your employees know that it's a better place to work by taking care of your people, I think you see that reward in people wanting to work with you. You're just a decent person to work with. And I think a lot of ways you begin to hear business can be nasty, and it can be, but it's also, our volume comes from repeat clients. We're about 70% of our work is repeat clients. We will intentionally, and sometimes you'll chase a client for 5-6 years before you get your first shot. So to a lot of folks in here, it's okay when you go to that client and you get everything ready and you get your insurance and you get your certification and you get that nice suit out, you get the shoes, right? You get the, same thing on the women's side, and you walk in and they tell you no. Don't feel bad. I literally have clients that I've been chasing for 10 years. Every quarter I give them a call and they'll tell me one story or the next, and I still don't get it. And recognizing that it's not personal, it's just the way things are. You can't every time somebody says no, close the door and don't come back out the next day. And I think that intensity, that consistency, to want to be different, to wait for somebody to hear your story, because every day is a different day. That's the great part about it. Just because somebody didn't want to hear your story yesterday doesn't mean they're not going to want to hear your story tomorrow. But you got to have that energy, you got to have that intensity to wake up every day, and regardless of yesterday's losses, just be optimistic about tomorrow can be different, or today just might be the different day. And I think for smaller businesses, that's the toughest part, because you hear about, you got to go get licensing, so you go through that, you got to get your insurance, you got to get a bond, you got to go get this, and then that doesn't mean when you walk in the first day, here comes the contract. It's okay. Even after 20 years in business, I still have clients that have not given me their business yet, and I've been chasing them for 10 years.
So I'm going to modify that question based on your answer a bit as I go to Jorge and Stephanie. And you said you've been chasing the business. Now, there's some folks who don't have to chase the business like you just described. And my question is, because we know that a lot of business comes through relationships. In fact, Stephanie just said that. How do you ensure that you are able to get through to the business? And I'm going to come back to you because I know you want to answer that question, but I'm going to ask Jorge, how do you get past, for lack of a better term, the friend network? I'll call it the friend network. I won't call it the good old boy network.
I mean, the two things that stick out to me is just bloody knuckles, knock, 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 knock. And then when you get that opportunity, outperform. I mean, quality, 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 so that it dissipates and diminishes any prejudices, anything they had in them. So I can't think of anything else besides not doing equal work, but doing exceptionally better work, so that so that they kind of are forced to want to use you. You know, it's that I can't think of any other way.
Stephanie?
You know, that network is real, the Friends Network that we're calling it. And then as we call it the Good Old Boys Network, coming into it as a woman.
Yeah.
You know, adds an additional dimension to that. And you're right, it's all driven by relationships. And I think relationships and resilience on your part as the business owner. The relationships, driving and building that relationship, I think, at least for us as a concrete contractor, our sales cycle, and our director of business development is here, Greg Faulkner, that's probably an 18 to 24 month pursuit, right, to build the relationship. And it happens over 8 to 10 or more contacts over that period of time before you get to an initial contract. So I never walk into it thinking that, oh, here's an opportunity. I've got all those things in place that Jimmy talked about, and now the contracts are going to start landing. I was former executive at ComEd before I left to take over my family's business. They knew me. I knew them. Wow. I knew the workforce. It took 7 years. 7 years before we had our first direct contract with them. So that whole notion of how do you build relationships, so how do you find common ground and sticking to it. As I was coming down the aisle here, I got stopped by a gentleman. And he goes, Stephanie, it's Bob Gallo. And he was busy talking, so I really wasn't looking at him. Well, that's a relationship that was 3-4 years in the making before we did the first work with them. And he's like, let me know how we can help. Jimmy and I, we were talking about relationship. 15 years, 16 years, we met in a parking lot that we were in the same building. And over time, just developed that relationship and that rapport. And now, you know, Ujama has been one of our longest standing clients, one of our biggest clients. We've teamed together on work, not just as a prime sub, but as joint venture team members. So those kinds of things take time. I think the question we all have here that we need to ask ourselves and ask of the network, how do we accelerate that activity? Because everybody does not have the time, the resources, the capital for these things to take 10 years. Now, we need Jimmy out there up front, pushing that 10 years, because as subcontractors, our opportunities are going to come through the general contractor. So we need to do what we do when we are on those jobs to demonstrate what Jorge talked about and having that quality. So there's no question about whether Jimmy can deliver with his team of diverse contractors, because when you walk around those projects, you see the quality and you understand it. So there really is that relationship with the clients, between subcontractors, with the workforce, to make this all come together. But I think the base of everything is about the relationships that you create and that you nurture over a long time horizon. And while Jimmy has mentored and coached me through things, and maybe it's worked the other way sometimes, we have to also look at the situation that are there some in the network that can also be coaches and mentors to us, right? We need to coach and mentor each other, but we should reach out. We should encourage the other large general contractors, the prime contractors, to engage them in relationship, not to see us as other, but to see us as key partners in what needs to happen in this economic environment.
Thank you for that. Jimmy, you want to?
No, I think you guys said it best. Bare knuckle is exactly what it is. You just have to keep showing up. And it sounds easier than, right? Sounds easier said than anything else, but you just have to keep showing up.
I want to start the next question with Jorge. And I want to ask, because you mentioned it earlier, and I will admit up front that this is a little self-serving. You talked about the training opportunities you had as you were coming up. So I want you to talk about each of those at every level, and then I want Jimmy and Stephanie to talk about training, programs, things that help them to, really hone their business and get in there. So Jorge, why don't you go first?
My training started through a traditional apprenticeship trades program, right? And then it was augmented by academics, right? My personal academics. But the previous company before I started, they had something similar on the office side. So it was, and we've adopted that at our internal. So we have essentially a project management apprenticeship program, right? And it's like a 5-year track to be a project manager. And so for us, it was part of it self-serving on our end as well, right? There's lack of workers, there's lack of skilled workers, there's lack of trades workers, and there's lack of people graduating from college that want to do this. So we have to create programs. We don't really have an option anymore. Before it was kind of like something good you might do. It's beyond that. We have to do things to train people to get there. I didn't have a lever to get people from a university that just came out, and even if they came out, it might not work. Something you still got to show up. So it was an internal. It was a benefit to me, but I saw it beyond that. I needed it for the survival of our company.
Shameless plug. We didn't plan this, but I'm going to say it. I was one of the inaugural class of the Chicago Next One program by the Chicago Urban League. And shameless plug, I was one of the first program, and we spent Saturdays over at Northwestern talking to business people. There was a cohort, so you had all the business members that were on the program, and it allowed you to talk to those businesses on a one-to-one candid conversation. And this has got to be at least 10, 15 years ago. So my business was very, very earlier back then. And I always like a peer type, especially what you guys do and you continue to do today, is you have your peers that are in similar businesses. Some are competing, some are not. You get a chance to talk to them in a way you can't talk to your employees at the office, because their challenges and their struggles are things that they can relate to. And some of their best practices are things that you can actually use and it actually works for you. And then you have all day long Saturday that you have some of the top business minds in a great business school sitting there that are willing to challenge your thinking. And to be able to use that information, and you get a one-on-one person to say, okay, and there was some executive coaching that came with it. What I really liked about the program is it developed every part of my entrepreneurship path, in the sense that up till then I was a project manager. I was very technical. That was it. You put a set of plans in front of me, I can build it. But you start talking to me, I start looking away, I'm not making eye contact, everything else that comes with that process. And I think that program, and subsequently I've done a couple since, have been really instrumental in talking and really being comfortable as a leader and understanding that I don't have to have all the answers, but there are people around you that can help you get to the answers. So especially for the ownership side, I always recommend, and I always say, have you done any business training? Because you begin to understand finances, your financials. I mean, for a long time, we just understand bids and profit on the job. But then you begin to understand overhead, and you begin to understand back supports. And then over the years, in addition to that, we've also done some mentoring on the joint venture side, which is what we're doing now, sort of joint venture downstream, to begin to understand some of those excellence that you need to have within your business to help you grow. The one thing about this city is I believe that there's so many organizations that do a really, really, really good job getting folks ready, as long as you go look for it and you take full advantage of it.
Thank you. Stephanie, what about you?
Jimmy did a good job of describing the Chicago Urban League Next One program. He was in the first cohort Trice was in the second one. And so we got the benefit of the learnings from them being the trailblazers in that. So that was all that he
I
described.
knew that. That was my shameless plug. But continue.
Absolutely. And I was going to find one way or another to make it here today. But we've done other programs since then because you always, if the one lesson, I took one primary lesson out of that program. And what it was you got to work on your business and not just in your business all the time. You hear that, but it was that commitment to the time on Saturdays and driving up to Northwestern and Fridays or whatever it was in the program. And then to have things that you could take a roadmap to apply in your business. I also participated in one called the Inner City Capital Connections, ICCC, again nominated by the Urban League to participate in that program. And again, to give you that detail around business plan, access to capital, marketing, relationship building, networking, all those things that are important. And it's not just attending those accelerator programs, but then actually applying what you learned. So there were some I got invited to and said, okay, we're still applying the stuff we learned from the last one. So there are lots of opportunities out there. You have to find the one that's the right fit for you, but that's an investment that you're making in your business. The time that you're taking away from it, that you're investing back into the business so that you learn those things. Nobody ever wants to talk about the balance sheet, right? And what are the leverage, what are the ratios, and DSO and DPO and all those things that are important to you to understand the health of your business. And so you got to learn that stuff. I even did the first contractor development program.
Sure.
Again, shameless plug for the Chicago Urban League was in the first cohort of that, and it was very basic. And I think somebody from Jimmy's company was teaching in that program when we took that. So take advantage of those things while you're getting your business positioned for the opportunities.
You talked about financials, both of you in fact did. Can you all talk about access to capital and how important that is? And what some of your successes have been, you don't have to be specific, but what some of your challenges have been as well. I'll start with you, Stephanie.
Well, it's hard to talk about building a business without talking about access to capital. And it's a vicious cycle. It's a circle. If one half of the circle is access to capital, the other half is access to contracts. Can't get the capital without the business. You can't get the business without the capital. So what do you do? So you have to find a way to interrupt that cycle. And a lot of it at the beginning, I don't know about Jorge and Jimmy, but I had to put my own money in. The first line of credit we had in the business was 100% guaranteed by my own money, right? So it's got a lot of credit, but I was self-funding it. But that gave me a chance to build a relationship with the bank to be able to move that forward. I think we have to also understanding and accessing the capital, just like everything else in business, that's also about the relationship. You know, you may have your personal accounts that name a bank. That's not necessarily where you need to go for your business banking. You need to talk to people. Do they understand and do they buy into your vision of your business? Because they will be a key stakeholder. That's somebody you got to talk to all the time to know what's going on with your business. And if you hadn't done the training and have the experience to understand how to read your own financials and to be able to interpret them, you're not going to get that back to them. One of the things I was doing at first when I was trying to find a bank was I was doing my sales pitch. Like, you know, we got this, we're going to do that, it's going to be wonderful, it's all rainbows and sparkles. And banks don't care about that. They really don't care. It's what did you do before, not what you're going to do. And so I really had to change how I talk to banks. And once we got the first relationship going well, there was a point, and I did this just a year ago, we competed banks for our business. Right? They're not all the same. They don't all have the same perspective. Most of them don't understand your business, and they're fearful of risk. And you've got to get them comfortable. And just like it takes time to build a business, it takes time to build relationships to find the right banking partner. So know your numbers. If you're not good with the numbers, I always hated math. I was doing some math yesterday. I couldn't believe I did it that fast in my head. But that comes from the years of working through the financials. And if you don't have somebody in-house, find somebody that you can work with at the Chicago Urban League, through other assist agencies that can help you focus on that, because that's what you need in order to go and talk to the banks. So we competed the banks. The first time we went out, we went to 10 banks. We got offers from 7. And then we could pick through them and then negotiate with them. But you can't do that if you're not really familiar with what's happening in your business. But that is the biggest challenge. Then you're looking for growth capital, right? So we got capital to operate, working capital every day. How do we get that next piece in to talk about how do we grow? And that's a whole other panel. So I'll stop there.
Jimmy and Jorge, talk about access to capital.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think the best advice to other business owners is, it's like one of those things you've heard about. You're better off having it and not needing it than needing it and not having it, in the sense that the 2 calls I make very frequently is to a banker and to a bond company, because I want to keep those relationships active. I want them to know what we're doing. And it's always better. I don't know why about you, Stephanie. You know, when you don't need the money is when they want to give it to you. When you
Take it.
yeah, when you need it, they don't want to give it to you. So you have to have that relationship ready, healthy, so that when you do need to tap that resource, it's there for you. So it's big, cultivating that relationship early. Touching bases, because it's the same thing. Banks and bond companies will vouch for you if they know you, right? They have underwriting systems and standards, and the stronger your relationship with them, the more they can push those underwriting standards. So don't wait till you need a loan before you go knock on the door. Chances are the answer is 0. Cultivate the relationship early. Cultivate the relationship often. Let them know your business. And because those are the relationships that you're going to need as you grow your business moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, being proactive is, you just can't be overstated. One of the tragedies that I often see is when companies are making money, you're making profit, but you have a liquidity issue, right? So everything's saying I'm making money, but everyone owes you money. And I don't remember the exact statistics. It's either 50-50 or worse. Most companies that go out of business is for liquidity, not necessarily profitability. And I've seen them come, and when I have mentored them and they start running out of money, and just like Jimmy said, if you're running out of money, that's when the bank shuts the door. So you got to get there early, and just be pragmatic about it. That's the industry. We have to deal with the industry as it is and then try to change it, right? But that's the industry. This is an industry of attrition. You gotta wait. You gotta hold on. You gotta plan for it. As soon as you start running out of money, they're gonna give you 50 cents on the dollar. They're gonna start they're gonna take advantage of all that. So be strong with your finances. Be strong with your capital. Always have more than you. Just get as much as you can.
Cash is king.
Cash is king. We talked earlier about employees, and all of you talked about how your connection with those individuals who are parts of your team. Can you talk about, and I thought about this because I just attended the North Lawndale Employment Network's event. In fact, I saw Stephanie and her team there. And you were there, yeah. So talk about returning citizens and really providing opportunity for them.
Big believer in second chances. I think if a citizen has paid their debt to the society, we owe it to them to incorporate them back into the community, because they're coming back into our community, and there has to be a pipeline. And I believe construction, especially union construction in Chicago, is an extremely good place for a start, because it's instant middle class with some of the best benefits in the country. But we also have to be realistic and be, and I say the word flexible in how we interact with that population group. I have had to go to court and talk on behalf of one of our folks to make sure he gets an early parole, because I want him to be able to access his job and to be able to concentrate on his job and not have to worry about when he can be and when he needs to leave early or not. And I think it's part of our humanity to always look out for, if you can help, do it. And I think that's what begins to set us apart and make us different. We have restrictions on what those past offenses can be to work with us, but we look at it as, and unfortunately, we also understand in this great country we have that, if you don't have access to resources, some of our young folks do stupid stuff, and they shouldn't be in the problems that they're in if they just had a good defense and they had good guidance at an earlier age. So to not give them a second chance and not open your arms to them and let them know that they have a reason, they have a goal, there's a part for them in this great fabric of what we call our city that they should be able to participate in. So we are wide open to bring our returning citizens in, and they are one of my toughest defenders. If you say the wrong thing in front of them, I gotta tell them, don't start no fight. It's okay. I can defend myself. Right? They are ready to go to war for you just because of how you helped in the past. And I encourage everybody to take a second look. You will find some incredible people with incredible stories if you're willing to just listen to their heart.
Jorge?
I have a kind of a really pragmatic view of this. I grew up in Humboldt Park, so I don't think I would have been here if everyone held my sins against me. And this is the 90s, so yeah. And but the practical thing, I remember having a meeting with Revolution. They spoke here earlier, and they are you okay with having some of the individuals are going to have some track records? I'm like, what? Some of it I think is illusionary, right? Because the workers that we had, I had plenty of workers that were from suburbs that were not people of color that have as many, their rap sheet is as long. As long, DUIs, battery, and I'm like, if we can't get them in construction, we're in big trouble. And going back to my original point, there's a labor shortage, and it looks like predictably it's going to be only increasing. We don't have the option anymore. We got to get these barriers down. We don't have the option. We need as many workers as possible, or frankly, things aren't going to get built. So we just, some of it is just like, I get the arguments, but let's just say they're old, outdated, and we just need to move on.
Stephanie?
They both stated it so well.
Sure.
It has to be part of the mix of the folks that we consider for opportunities. Greg Faulkner sits on the board of NLEN and has identified how do we partner and find opportunities for people. And I say even before I was aware of those kinds of programs, there were folks that we brought into the company very early on who are among our most tenured employees, who are among our highest paid employees, and who have the most responsibility that are returning citizens. And we're really proud. When I talked about pictures of college graduations, that was shown to me by one of our returning citizen employees. So we're really do believe that that second chance has to happen. I've talked to some of the companies that we do business with and saying that's a barrier to us finding people when you put the criteria on the background. And so they need to look at that. They're pushing, as we are, for workforce development, but we can't leave a group that's stranded out there. So they've got to review what they're asking for and see if it's really germane to the work that needs to get done. So we all have to work. We've got that whole group of folks that are ready, ripe, and able to do the work. And we've got to be open about that, about second chances and sometimes third chances.
We can't create those false barriers. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, DUI, driving while black. We can't,
Yep.
there are people we can't cover on our insurance because of their driving record. So we had to go from saying, do you have a valid driver's license to, do you have a clean driving record?
Sure.
And that's another barrier that we don't have to have that comes because of societal issues. And, I tell the young men and women, I say, I understand you got to guard your driver's license almost the same way you have to guard your criminal record.
Yep. All right. That's the note that says it's time for audience questions, right on time. So you all now have the opportunity to do what I'm doing.
If you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic over. Questions? Anyone? Questions?
Oh, we did good. We answered all the questions. Oh, no.
My name is Brian Bridges. I own Band Construction. And so my question to you all is, everyone is experiencing the shortages of people wanting to go into the trades. Do any of your companies do work visas for people who live outside of America to come to Chicago to work on your construction sites?
Yes. I do.
For us, yes. We recruit out of colleges, and what we see is you get a lot of international students that are studying engineering and architecture, especially out of IIT and some of the Purdue and some of the other schools. So, and it's, 10 years ago, we'll probably say, now we're H-1B visa. We actually, our old HR department understands how to process an H-1B visa, how to transfer from their current employer into where we are. We know the lottery systems now. It's just a mix of, and it's funny because I like to joke and tell our, when we meet with our company, it says, hey, we're the United Nations of construction. And it creates its own challenges because you're meshing cultures, but I think it's the fun part for me is when we have company events and people bring different backgrounds and different way of looking at things, different food, and you just kind of go to the area and you really learn from other folks that you have to. I think we're going to be challenged for labor for a long time. We have to go. I'm trying to recruit a kid out of Jamaica now, which is funny. We've been talking to him for the last 3 months. So it's openness and just the ability to say, okay, all right, let me hear your story, and understanding that everybody has something to add to this experience that we call life, and we're open to hearing and seeing how to incorporate it into what we're trying to do.
And for us, we've not gone down that path, so just something for consideration.
Yeah, I think I would add that similar to the second chances and things on that aspect, consider also the dedication they bring. If you give them a shot, people are genuinely thankful and they work pretty hard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vinkila Jones. I'm here with Trice Construction. And my question for you all is, what strategies have you all put in place if you fell into the red with your company? Or if you haven't, what strategy would you put forth to bring your company back into the green? And where do you reach from to keep going when you do come to a point where you feel like your back is against the wall in your company?
I think Stephanie should answer that one. Okay, all right, I'll go. I think, okay, for us, at least for me, I'll respond to it in a personal way. So for me, it's a 20-year business, and we've been good in bringing some really good people on board over the last 20 years that's been with us. We got folks now 10, 15 years that's been around. And what I try to do is to be open about it. I'm not closed. So every aspects in the matrices and the dashboards in the office, I have multiple people looking at it whose interest is aligned with mine in the, let's call it the health of Ujamaa construction. So between all of them, you've heard this. If you're in a room and you're the smartest person, you better get up and leave, okay? So I got some pretty folks that I would like to say, and I believe they're smarter than me. So if you see everything I see, somebody should see something before I see it, and we can do something about it. And yeah, your second part is when it's terrible, what makes you get up? I think the closest thing I can think about is during COVID, when nobody had any idea what to do. But I woke up every morning and our folks showed up. And if they showed up, I knew I didn't have a choice but to show up. And this is when nobody knew what was going to happen, right? Them first couple of days, if you were 200 feet from somebody, you were scared you were going to die. But they still showed up, right? And if they showed up, then I feel like I can't fail them, right? I guess that's what the Marines do. You fight for the guy next to you, not necessarily you anymore. We've grown our organization now that we're a mentoring organization, and we kind of look at ourselves to go, how are we getting better even within the company? So for me, my job is to show up and every day to tell everybody it's going to be okay. Let's just keep doing what we do well.
Whew. I got trauma now, remembering. I think Jimmy's brought it up a couple times, get up. And I was thinking that maybe 15 years ago, that's not a good answer. But you don't have any other option. You just don't have any other option but to get up and just do what you did that day, and then pick up the pieces the next day and just get it a little better and a little better, and that's all you got. And you'll be surprised what you can come through. Because I really don't know. When we first started, I'm pretty statistically minded, so I knew that back then, when I started 15 years ago, was the success rate of any entrepreneur was like 20%. I think it's worse now. I think it's a lot worse. And we used to be like cold 20, like 20%. That's horrible, right? That's a horrible. So you just kind of got to embrace that this is part of the journey, right? And it's an anomaly if you make it, right? And all you can do is get up, move on, and just, as long as you can make decisions, just like, I'm going to make the best decisions today and go collect your money. collect. And if something's not working, just make as many best decisions as you can. And I have seen, we came out a couple rough ones, and I've seen plenty of people do it.
Yeah, we've been through our own existential. I'm like you, I got a little traumatized here thinking about it. It's like you want to keep that in your rearview mirror, but those are the things that kind of help you know what you don't want to do. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're kind of doing everything, and you want to be everything to everybody, and you find out that that's not always the path to success. And sometimes you learn what you don't do by doing it and figuring out it doesn't work for you. But I think what Jimmy and Jorge were really describing here is what we heard a week or so ago from Jalen Hurts in the interview after the Super Bowl, when they asked him, you had this loss, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I don't lose. You either win or learn. And you have to take those opportunities where you've gotten yourself in the red, and learn from it. Why? How? What do we need to do differently? And take every situation as an opportunity for improvement to do better in your business. And it goes back to, I think, the word we talked about earlier. It's having a level of resilience to be able to get up and put one foot in front of the other every day and just keep moving forward to your ultimate goals.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, and then once we wrap up the panel, we are going to give do our third Bulls raffle, so make sure you hang around for that. It'll be exciting to be in the room if you win. So.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Cindy Stewart. I'm with Sustainable Options for Urban Living, and we do training, workforce development training, contractor development support training, technical assistance. So my question has to do with, for those of us that have been out here, and I got gray hair to prove it, we've been out here a long time doing this. Our organization, we are not only supporting the construction industry, but we're heavily involved in the clean energy space. And there are so many opportunities that are coming our way to our communities, but we're finding that our community is so jaded now. They no longer believe, they've been lied to or misled so many times, that now that the banquet table is set, we're finding it difficult to get, especially young people, to come and to take advantage of it. And even some of our businesses are like, oh, I went through this, in UWI or something else. So what is it that our businesses like yours can do to help us get more people into the system trained to work for you?
I'll start responding to that one. You know what? We got to take some chances on folks. Kayla here, who stood up to ask that really great question, is an example of a young person who went through one of the training programs and heard about her and invited her in. Chicago Women in Trades, as a matter of fact, who was on the last panel, came through Chicago Women in Trades, and she showed up and is the only person I have ever in my entire career hired on the spot. Right, and brought her in for an opportunity, and she doesn't even want to work at our part of construction, right? So I saw the potential and the passion there, and we're trying to help her to get into the IBEW where she wants to work. I'm really pushing, so we'll talk in for those of you who have IBEW opportunities. Oh, no, she'll stay with us if she doesn't make it there. I'm not giving her up easily. As an entrepreneur. Okay, some things to think about, because that's one thing Jimmy talked about, how we've developed other entrepreneurs out of our workforce that have gone on to start their own businesses. So absolutely getting folks into the exposure to the training is the important thing, and we got to start early to identify them.
Sustainability.
I'll jump on that one. In our experience, so we've been working with the Chicago CTE program for high school kids for the last 20 years. And we, every Christmas, holiday season, summertime, we got kids in our office. And I will say to all our project managers, just, what do you want them to do? And I said, just let them run around the office. They'll figure it out. And we, between trying to get them to stop surfing Facebook and bringing in viruses, at the end of the day, the intent is we just keep them around engineers and contractors and people that they see, and hopefully that trigger something. And I think that we keep hearing about, and it's funny because over 20 years now, we've had folks who were in the CT program in high school, went to college, and they're working for us. Jordan, who's actually, we picked him up when we were doing Walmart on 83rd Street about 15 years ago. It's been with us about 8 years now. He's the project manager on the new casino. Devontae, who was over at, Dunbar, where we picked him up, he's the mechanical superintendent on the Obama Library, high school kid, and he's been with us about 7 years now. And it's so funny, he was with us about 4 years. He decided he thought he wanted to leave. He left. He came back within a year saying, oh, nope, bad move. And he's been with us ever since. But our kids will only, we're talking to them, but we're not showing them. I think we have to go back into the showing. We got to go back into the schools and let them see the opportunities. Unfortunately, our counterparts in some ways are generational, right? Like Stephanie, their dad was in construction, their granddad was in construction. The dinner table conversations was things about construction. All the conversations, they lived it all around them. So even if they chose not to, they were very familiar with that process. And I think what we need to do is we need to start embracing our young folks and let them see, right? And it's okay if they don't like it or they don't understand or they don't get it just yet, but we have to let them see. It's why we're located on 77th and Stony Island. I could have been anywhere I wanted in the city. I chose that location because I want the kids on the south side to see not just a contractor, but a contractor working on major projects in the city of Chicago that's right down the street from them.
So we have time for one more group question. I know a few folks had their hands up. We are short on time. We have another panel after this, but I'm sure that our panel of experts here would be happy to hang back and chat with you on the side if you have extra questions. So if we don't get to you during the group, hopefully we can find some time to get your questions answered after as we're getting ready for the next panel.
Hi, my name's Christine. I'm the founder of Black Brown Market here in Chicago, and my question is really around working with you. There's a little bit of the chicken and the egg when you're dealing with the city in terms of what they're looking for, and we're looking to build something really great. I think you touched on something really important, Stephanie, is risk aversion can happen, and we are really committed to being on the west side of Chicago. But I think that in dealing somebody like myself who didn't sign up to necessarily get into construction or get into politics, I'm just a creative who wants to do good work and create something dynamic for the city. And I think that there's not a straightforward answer on when we get involved with you and how we show up to give them the right information that they need to sign up on a project. So I'm just curious if you guys have more insight that you can provide on when's a good time to get you looped in and how a small business can better work with you when they're trying to build something from the ground up.
Right now. You don't wait, right? If you got a great idea, you've got an opportunity, you've got a service you can sell, it's a long sales cycle. You've got to build that relationship over time. So you don't delay. You find an opportunity to meet folks like Jorge and like Jimmy and myself and put it out there. So, and never think you're not in politics, that you're not in sales, that you're not in those other things you named. As an entrepreneur, you're in all of it, all the time.